How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with your boys, Alex and Ryan. So today we're talking about outfield future. Is there a blockbuster situation the Yankees could find themselves in? Now, personally, I think that they're going to take a little bit more of a cost-efficient, price-efficient model here, and they're going to go after Yamamoto, as the reports are indicating. I think they want him. They want that international star. But we all know, that offense is paramount. We need bats. We need to inject more life into this lineup one way or another. Eventually, Dominguez will return. But in the meantime, you kind of have to find another outfielder. So I wanted to discuss some kind of big blockbuster concepts here, if there's any legs, if there should be any legs. Bellinger, Juan Soto, and then now the new kind of element into the mix here is Mike Trout. And if you guys haven't heard, according to USA Today is Bob Nightingale. So I guess, take it for the grain of salt, because it's all kind of just speculation at this point. Mike Trout is reportedly, potentially, could be traded, but again, he has a no trade clause, so important to note that. He'd have to agree to anything that the Angels did with him, and I imagine his whole family's in Los Angeles, and they've been living there for a very long time now. He may not want to leave, and he may just I'd rather just not win baseball games and, make my money and just live in LA. So maybe that's something that he would prefer to do. Otherwise, maybe he's like, you know what? I think I'm picking up the fam. We want to go to a place that's going to win baseball games and actually is going to put their money where their mouth is, which would theoretically be the Yankees. I have an idea for that, Ryan, that could make sense, and it does actually make logical sense if they could pull it off. But, what are your thoughts about the conjecture of the blockbuster deal? Do you think that there's cards in play for the Yankees to make a move of this magnitude, or do you think we're looking more at supplementary pieces, guys that can hold things over until Dominguez comes back and whatnot? What are you thinking about those things?
Yeah, so the first thing I'll say regarding a Mike Trout situation, since that's the new stuff, that's the thing that just got put out there. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that makes sense for the Yankees. Not because Mike Trout isn't good. Mike Trout is very good, but coming off of coming off of a hamate bone thing, the chronic back issues, the big money on his contract, it only really makes sense if you have the DH spot open, and you don't. So, if the Angels were like, hey, we'll take prospects and Giancarlo Stanton and you take Mike Trout, I'd be like, yeah, sure, 100%, because you're just swapping one big contract for another, and the big contract you're swapping is Giancarlo Stanton for a guy who, is still a 140 WRC plus hitter with pretty good defense in center field and really good base running. I think Mike Trout just works more for a team that has the DH spot a little bit more open and has, doesn't have that Giancarlo Stanton type contract on their payroll. So, personally, not thinking that Mike Trout thing is going to happen. I think Philly, that makes more sense. Not the Yankees. That's unfortunate, but I don't know if it makes much sense. It's not because he's right-handed. It's not because he strikes out. It's not because of his performance. It's because of injuries and the Yankees having already a lot of money tied up to guys in their mid-30s who are injury-prone. So let's be real. If Mike Trout went to the Phillies, he'd play 150 games and be an MVP candidate. If he went to the Yankees, he'd for some reason only play 80 games a year. We're cursed right now. I don't know how to put it. Looking at Juan Soto, that's the obvious one. Everyone, every Yankee fan who knows anything about the game of baseball wants Juan Soto playing left field. Oh, but he can't play left field. I don't care. He hits, right? He's Juan Soto. I think that's the best way to put it. I think he'd be a 150 to 155 WRC plus hitter here with upside, great plate discipline. I think the Yankees have the ammo to do it. I don't know if they're going to be able to outbid other teams in the trade market, and I don't know if they're going to be able to extend him before he hits free agency. So those are the two variables there. Can the Yankees trade for Juan Soto if he's available? Yes, but there are just a lot of variables that we don't know just yet. Number one, is AJ Preller still the GM on, let's say, October 31st? Is Juan Soto available for trade? Is Juan Soto open for an extension? Are the Yankees going to be the top bidder? Are the bidders for Juan Soto only going to be teams that think they can sign him in free agency? Or will a team like the Orioles say, screw it, we just throw in our baskets for a year. We'll go get Juan Soto, and we know we can't re-sign him, but we'll have him for a year. I don't know. I think that kind of all changes your perspective on whether you sign him or not. And then lastly, Bellinger's case. Alex, there's not a track record of guys who have the offensive profile he has who sustain a 140 WRC plus bat. I'm not saying he's Jacoby Ellsbury, because I think Jacoby Ellsbury didn't work in New York because of injuries. I think had he stayed healthy, he would have been a pretty good player. But I don't think Cody Bellinger is a 140 WRC plus hitter. I don't think the Yankees should give him $200+ million. If that price tag looks closer to $150 million over 6 to 7 years, I'm all for it. You're basically giving him the Carlos Rodon deal. Is Cody Bellinger worth a Carlos Rodon deal? Yeah, I think so. He can also play first base. So if you feel like you don't want to keep Anthony Rizzo around, or he doesn't produce it the way that you expect him to produce or that you need him to produce, you have a built-in option there alongside DJ LeMahieu. You have versatility. Versatility is always great. Left-handed, of course, and he's very fast. I think he's a good player. I just don't know if I'm giving him $200 million. So if I had to rank who I'd want, obviously Juan Soto's number one. And then Bellinger and Trout, like, they have obscure arguments for number 2 and number 3. But overall, I kind of agree. I think they're going to go more cost efficient. If they go big, I think that means they're not getting Yamamoto. And I'm not guaranteeing they're going to get Yamamoto. I'm just saying I think it's an either-or situation for Juan Soto or Yamamoto. I don't think it's an either-or situation for Yamamoto and improving the offense. You can't get Juan Soto and Yamamoto, I think. I think you'd have to do one or the other, but you can't guarantee that you can get Soto, whereas you can guarantee you can get Yamamoto by just offering him more money, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'll ask you this. We can have a conversation about this. What do you think that it would cost to get Mike Trout, given that he's been injury prone, given he's making $37.5 million per year? I think he only has $35.5 million against the luxury tax. Do you think that he would still cost a lot, even though the injuries and contract expire when he's 38 years old? I don't know.
I would say yeah. Like, I'd say he'd still cost a decent bit, because I think that what's going to happen is you're going to see a team like Philly, or a team like the Mets maybe, or like a team like the Dodgers, a team with a lot of money, saying, okay, we're going to eat a good portion. We're going to ask you to eat. We're going to eat a good portion of that contract. We're going to take on a lot of money. And we'll do so, or we'll say, hey, we'll send money or you got to send money our way, or whatever it may be. If the Angels prefer money over prospects, then the Yankees can kind of easily do that without trading many prospects. But again, the issue is that you'd have to roster him alongside other big contracts for guys who are over 30 years old and injury prone. If they want prospects more than money, then the Angels are going to open up their market a lot more. If the Angels say, hey, we'll eat 50% of the contract, then they can open themselves up to get really good prospects. But I don't think they're going to be able to get like a top 10 prospect in all of baseball for Mike Trout, even though he is that good. Like, he's worth that type of player or that investment. But the issue is the money. That's the real issue here. He has chronic back issues. He's coming back from a hamate bone thing. We don't know what he looks like post hamate bone. He's having the worst year of his career right now. Like, he's currently having a year that is un-Mike Trout-like. It's not a bad year. It's just very not Mike Trout. A 130 WRC plus at age 32, we're talking about like a 30% decrease in offensive production from age 31 to 32. Considering all the injuries, considering that the back thing, I'm pretty sure that's a chronic thing. I don't think it's going to go away for a while. And then the hamate bone, we saw what it did to Benintendi this year. We've seen what it did to Aaron Hicks. We saw what it did to Mark Teixeira. Those type of injuries are tough to come back from. It's just really hard to project Mike Trout right now. It really is. So I don't know if you can ask for a lot from Mike Trout unless you're asking to eat a lot of money as well.
Right, and that's kind of what I was getting at. If you are the Yankees and you're like, if we could trade some prospects, whatever pool, whatever haul it might be, whatever's enough, so the Angels pay half of his salary for the rest of the deals, the rest of the year, I guess the rest of the years until he's 38 years old. Is it worth it? If the Yankees gave away enough that they could convince the Angels to pay half of his salary, he would be costing about $17.5 million per season against the luxury tax threshold, which is less than what Donaldson was making by a pretty significant margin. You're basically replacing Luis Severino's contract with Mike Trout. Is that worth it? You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a reasonable argument to make, to say you're getting a guy that's 5 years younger than Josh Donaldson, yet he is obviously injury prone. But look, if you get 100 games out of Mike Trout a year and he's giving you a 140 WRC plus, are you taking that? Like, is that something you're willing to take? And like, assuming that you can maintain his health and he's good for the postseason, are you willing to sacrifice that? Because people will argue on the behalf of Harrison Bader, like, oh, it's worth it. Like, let's extend Bader. It's worth it. There are people out there that would justify it. It's a lot easier for Mike Trout because he plays the same amount of games as Bader. He's not a really good defender. He's a solid defender. He's adequate. And, you look at what he can do with the bat, and he's elite. He's elite. You know what I mean? So is that something that you consider? If you could convince the Angel to take half his salary, you're paying half his salary, $17.5 million, about that for the next couple of years until that contract expires, and I think 2031, and he'll be 38 years old, same age, is pretty much expiring the same time as Judge's contract would be, theoretically. Are you willing to take that deal? Are you willing to do that? And the question is, how many prospects do you have to give up to get it? Or would you rather just, if you're gonna shred the farm system, would you just do it for Juan Soto instead, right? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of feels like And I saw this on Twitter too, and I thought that was a really good comparison. This kind of feels like this is a remaking of that Stanton and Harper situation where the Yankees trade for Giancarlo Stanton. They use that as a reason to not sign Bryce Harper. And then we see how those careers have gone. And not saying that, Mike Trout is going to end up having the career of Giancarlo Stanton post age 32, but it's still it's still like a fun parallel. It is still a parallel that kind of exists, right? It's almost scary how similar it is. A Yankees team kind of looking for another star to couple with Aaron Judge needs a big bat, and there's Mike Trout available and there's Juan Soto available. I personally think if you're going to trade that big package, you go with Juan Soto because then you can extend them on your terms, right? And if he doesn't have a great year in New York, not that you don't re-sign him because, it's hard for me to imagine Juan Soto not being a good player. But, you get to extend him on your terms. Now, you do have to bid with other teams, and that's going to be tough. But here's the thing, Alex. You're the New York Yankees. Like, I feel like it's embarrassing that we're sitting here and talking like, can the Yankees, are they going to be the top bidders for Juan Soto? That isn't a question 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we're not having that conversation. And I'm not a guy who's like, oh, man, I miss when George was alive. Like, number one, I was like 4 when he was alive. And number two, like, I understand the reason why the Yankees were able to have the core 4 come up in the first place was because George wasn't able to medal because he was suspended, right? So I understand that. But from a financial standpoint, Hal Steinbrenner, number one, you've got to be like you've got to be willing to consistently spend over your mistakes if you're gonna green light certain signings. If you want Aaron Judge at $40 million a year, you've got to be ready to when you have to spend over him. In the last few years of that deal, if you green lighted that trade for Giancarlo Stanton, it is your due diligence. It is your responsibility as the owner of the New York Yankees to spend over him when that contract starts aging poorly. Yankee fans aren't shocked that Giancarlo Stanton's contract isn't aging great. We knew it wasn't going to age great. The whole point was to win a World Series before he started aging poorly. Unfortunately, they didn't do that. So, you can't say, oh, we're going to trade for Juan Soto, we're going to sign Yamamoto, we're going to sign Bellinger, trade for Trout, whatever it may be, and then use that to not sign another player that you really do need or that can really help you or takes you over the edge. You got to commit to something. You're either going all in or you're focusing on building internally. You got to do it one way or another, and you got to stick to that for the course of a few years. You can't just do it once and then flip-flop. Look at what they had in 2017. They had something special. They had one of, if not the brightest future in Major League Baseball. And it's 2023. That core didn't win a World Series. Most of those pieces are gone. And we're sitting here and we're talking about not making the playoffs, finishing potentially below 500, finishing last in the division. I just view it as, if you're going to when we're having this conversation, you have to be willing, if you're Hal Steinbrenner, to spend over your mistakes. And if you're Brian Cashman, the money's got to go to better places. We've talked about this a million times. There is no reason, none at all, that you're getting beat on the margins as badly as you're getting beaten. You have the most expensive position player core in baseball this year, Alex, and your offense sucks. You have a team 93 WRC plus. It's not that they're not good. It's that they stink. I get it. A lot of guys got hurt. Maybe don't spend on injured guys. And then that's part of the argument against Mike Trout, right? Maybe don't keep spending on injury-prone guys. I think Juan Soto's kind of the easiest. It's easiest to explain, the one that makes most sense. It's probably the hardest to do, but it's the one that makes the most sense. Bellinger's the one that I don't see it happening. I think the Cubs just stick with him. And then Trout is kind of like, I just don't think the fit makes sense. I think they'll go cheap there. Dominguez, it's not like Dominguez is out for all of 2024. If he was out for all of 2024, maybe it's a different conversation. He's out for maybe 2 months. I'm not too concerned about center field. Just go cheap if you want to. Focus on getting a big bat in left field or at third base. But you don't need to find a replacement for Jason Dominguez if he's out for 2 months?
Yeah, look, even if it's a couple months, you got to find a supplement. I think they're willing to wait for him personally, so we'll see what happens there. But definitely excited to hear your perspectives below in the YouTube comments, my friends. Look, Bellinger, we know he's going to cost. The Yankees, are they willing to spend? I don't think they're going to spend on both Yamamoto and Bellinger, so it's one or the other. Their starting pitching rotation was god-awful today, and in addition to that, their hitting was god-awful. So which one do you prioritize? The guy who's going to play every day as a hitter or the guy who's going to pitch once every 5 days? I personally would probably go offense if I had to choose, just because we need it badly. But Yamamoto's 25 years old, and look, the Yankees can afford to do both, which is what pisses me off the most. Like, they could do both if they wanted to, but Hal's trying to turn back I guess not even turn back the clock, but really try to figure out how he can spend less money and create a better team, which is easier said than done. And that indicates probably going to see a lot of analytical changes this upcoming season, but always happy to hear your perspectives below. Make sure to like and subscribe as always. I'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.